with the last part of my video analysis onto my star. I know it took a while, around 4 videos, but that's because I love this story so much and I think that it deserves the recognition. So, in the last videos I made an analysis per episode about the development of Sojun and Jiu's relationship to understand how it evolved and why it was so good. But now I want to focus on one character which I think is really fascinating and complex, even if you hate him. And that person is Hyungi. I know you will kill me because I will not talk in depth about Pilhyun and Homin, but I'm not doing it because there isn't so much to analyze. They are basically sort of comic relief, which, don't get me wrong, I love both of them and I find hilarious that Pilhyun appeared in Where Your Eyes Linger and had to deal with a similar situation. I mean, he's a character that is vibrant and adds a lot of fun to the story, and side by side with Homin, they make an iconic duo. So even if they are not tough cookies to crack, such as Jiu and Hyungi, they give the story a lot of color and warmness through their friendship with Sojun, which is adorable. As for Yusul, I didn't get to see many sides of her to make a full character analysis. Again, don't get me wrong, the reason why I think there isn't so much to unpack is because she's already a very honest and straightforward character. I mean, she's a diligent woman with a strong sense of responsibility. She embodies what a true reporter is, which is someone who will not stop until the truth is revealed. The only thing that I'll mention is that I love the fact that she's sort of like an ally of Sojun and Jiu. She's a strong person you can rely and trust on, and as a woman, I can say that this is the sort of female representation that I have been waiting for, because I'm so done with the sort of misogynistic representation of women in some BL and yaoi where we are represented as villains or a threat to one of the main characters as if we are in a competition to gain a man. So I'm really grateful for this positive representation. So finally, once I said all of this, let's move on to the Hyungi character analysis. I know, you may be thinking now, like, why is she so obsessed with Hyungi as a character? He's a piece of trash, isn't he? And I would ask you again, is he actually? I mean, he's the kind of person we wouldn't like to identify with because he's sort of like the villain, but still, I think that he's the most human character in the story. Let me explain. I think that the regular person is more likely to be similar to Hyungi than the more kind-hearted characters Jiu and Sojun. I mean, though Sojun and Jiu feel beautifully real, you may agree with me that both of them are very special people. It takes a while to find people as honest and raw as Sojun and Jiu. And even if Sojun is my favorite character, I can say that it is difficult to relate to his straightforwardness and confidence. I mean, most people find themselves in a journey of self-discovery, where they are learning to love themselves and to love others. They are not quite yet at Sojun's level of emotional intelligence, empathy, and confidence. So sometimes we may relate more to Hyungi, being worried about what society expects from us, hurting others because we don't want to get hurt, remaining silent and not say our true feelings because we are afraid of rejection, or maybe secretly envying people around us because we are not confident enough. Those are very human things that we have to face and grow out of them. But not everyone, as I said, is quite there yet, and certainly Hyungi is not there. His insecurities are right there, like an open wound, manifested through jealousy, and this jealousy is basically the fuel that transforms him into a villain. And you will ask me, what exactly are these so-called insecurities? Well, firstly, I will start with his insecurities related to social and financial status. Do you remember the rich lady which appeared a couple of times in the story? Well, for me this lady represents society's expectations, and what she sees is what the world perceives. She sees in Hyungi a talented and successful upper middle class man, which of course is the way Hyungi wants to be perceived. In the eyes of this lady, Hyungi is above Jiu because while a man who graduated from one of the top culinary schools in Italy is a successful man, someone like Jiu, a quote-unquote regular cook, is not. But the problem in here is that this perception enters in conflict with reality because even if Jiu is a cook with no educational background, he was the one who made all the recipes. And this reality makes Hyungi feel uneasy since he is well conscious of Jiu's talent. So what Hyungi does to feel better about himself is to accept and reinforce the social distance that exists between them in order for him to feel comfortable while looking down at other person. But let's not forget that determining your value according to comparing yourself with others is a double-edged sword, because when Sejun appears, there is no way in which he could surpass the social status of a famous actor. This is the messed up world where Jiu is lesser than Hyungi, and at the same time both of them are lesser than Sejun. Actually, I have a theory of my own. I think that Hyungi is not just jealous of Jiu because he's more talented than him, but he's also jealous because Jiu got the attention of a person of high social status while he didn't. I know, weird, but it gets weirder because at the same time he had a sort of crush / admiration for Sejun at the beginning. He seemed to be kind of in love with Jiu. I think that he didn't have noticed it or didn't wanted to notice it because Jiu was lesser than him or because he was afraid of confessing and preferred to be safe. But the moment he sees that Jiu starts to open to Sejun more than what he has opened with him in years, that's where Hyungi really gets frightened. His insecurities related to social status of course make him feel vulnerable, but the thing that hurts him the most is his incapacity to open himself and connect with others. This insecurity is represented through his jealousy of the intimate connection that Sejun and Jiu share. Hyungi envies Sejun's confidence because while Sejun is a person who always creates an environment for intimacy and vulnerability, Hyungi prefers to stay safe, comforted by his own ego, afraid to show himself weak in front of someone else. Hyungi also envies Jiu's loyalty, because while Jiu is someone who protects the ones he loves till the very end, Hyungi is someone who prefers to save himself and sacrifice others as long as he can remain comfortable. So, in this way, dragged by his insecurities, he uses his financial instabilities as a way to justify manipulating Jiu in a coward attempt to shut down his insecurities, trying to keep Jiu by his side, not as an equal, but as someone beneath him, trying to keep Jiu in the darkness for him to not be seen by a star such as Sejun, whose attention Hyungi secretly envies, and lastly, trying to keep Jiu and Sejun away from each other so he's not the only one who feels alone and miserable. But in the end, he just becomes a villain. He loses the closest person to him and is ultimately humiliated by the very society that fed his ego for years. Alone, insecure, afraid of intimacy, while at the same time craving it, that's miserably Hyungi. He's not straightforwardly bad, but rather a mirror of society and its expectations. He's someone who, in his pursuit of protecting his ego, forgot everything about real self-esteem, denying himself with his actions the experience of honestly loving himself and others. But while Hyungi will spend a time constraining himself in society's expectations, this will not be the case for Sejun and Jiu. So, since this is the last video that I'll be making onto my star, I wondered to myself if there was something which I didn't cover in the episodic analysis. And you know guys, there is something which I have been wanting to talk to you for a while, which is how To My Star broke all the rules corresponding to top-bottom stereotypes. You see, I have been a fan of BL since I was a teenage girl. I firstly started watching and reading yaoi stories, and I remember loving it so much at the time. But as I grew up, I realized that there were a lot of problematic things within the genre, and one of these things was the reinforcement of gender roles. And you will ask me, how is it possible that gender roles can exist in boys' love? Well, you may be surprised, but some of the top bottom stereotypes that exist within the BL genre are straightforwardly borrowed from straight narratives. Let me explain. The top, which is often portrayed as the person with the most masculine features, is the one in control and the one who makes all the advances in the relationship, whether it's to decide when to date, kiss, or even have sex, sometimes even forgetting about consent. The top is also represented as more impulsive and powerful than the bottom, such that you can expect controlling and abusive behavior masqueraded as quote-unquote intense love. On the other hand, the bottom is often represented as the person with the most feminine features, and according to society, someone who is feminine is supposed to be submissive, sensitive, and weak, is someone who takes a passive role in its own life. In this way, characters are constrained to behave in a certain way, according to the label that they have been given, such that there are only two available options: to be masculine or to be feminine. And by this moment, you may have realized that there is no one who can actually be 100% feminine or masculine, because we all fall into a spectrum. Our personality is basically a mixture of both. And to label and constrain ourselves as either masculine or feminine is just a way to oppress and hide our real selves. So, what I love about this story is that it portrays the healthy relationship of two men who are free to be as feminine or masculine as they want and as they feel, without having to imply that one of them is the top and the other is the bottom. Gio, for example, exhibits some masculine features such as his seriousness and protectiveness. He's not really expressive and has a somewhat cranky personality, but he also exhibits traits that are often associated with femininity, such as the fact that he's insecure, younger, and finds himself in an unfavorable financial situation. He has moments of emotional vulnerability, and during most of the story, he waits till Sejun gives the first step. So, does this mean that Sejun is the top? Well, he has also some common traits of masculine characters, such as his high social status, confidence, and decisiveness. He is the oldest one of them and is the one who makes most of the advances in the relationship. But again, Sejun can be also pretty feminine too. He's basically the definition of cuteness. He's joyful, kind, and sensitive, and he's really open about his feelings, such that he will not be afraid of crying or showing tender affection. So, finally, after all the traits that I've mentioned, can you conclude anything? Can you tell me who's the top or who's the bottom according to their personalities? I think that neither of us can, actually. Because one of the main takeaways of the story is that it doesn't matter. I mean, even in the last scene, nothing can be concluded because both of them take an active role in the scene. I actually really enjoyed reading a comment in a video which said that this scene was not just a Where Your Eyes Linger reference, but also a negotiation where they were asking each other what they will do. And the interesting part is that the story ends right before this question is answered. Sejun says, "I don't know, shall we find out?" They kiss and the camera looks away, as if the story is telling us that knowing who's the top or who's the bottom is none of our business. Because what actually matters here is that they are finally free from all society's expectations, including gender roles. I think that we have filled the media with a lot of things that are not love. We have told the stories of people who don't respect each other's, stories in which people don't even love themselves and engage in toxic and manipulative relationships where they hurt themselves and others in the name of love. So, To My Star for me is like a warm light in a place full of darkness. And I think that it is a relevant story, not just as a BL, but as a love story in general. To My Star has become one of my favorite love stories of all time. You can find it in a pedestal in my heart right next to La La Land and Little Women. I genuinely think that this story is meaningful because it doesn't matter whether you find yourself in a homosexual or heterosexual relationship, if you're a man, woman, or non-binary. I believe that respect, empathy, consent, and love should be universal concepts. So, thanks a lot for watching these videos and for loving this drama as much as I did, and I hope I can see you next time. Bye.